I'm joined by Kheoshi Owens, the founder of Empress Rules. Kheoshi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
First, let's just talk about you, who you are, and a little bit about Empress Rules. How did this get started?
Whoa. So, if I got to talk about who I am, let me talk about my grandparents. They came here in the 40s. My grandfather is from Oklahoma. My grandmother is from Chicago. They came here. They started a family during the Vanport time. So, that's how long my family has been here. I'm born and raised here. I love Portland. Portland's my home. And I grew up in a different type of Portland. I grew up in a somewhat integrated Portland. I didn't know it was the whitest city in the United States when I was growing up. You could have fooled me. We had integrated neighborhoods. We, barbecued with each other. And the reason why I started Empress Rules is that I'm an innovative, brilliant Black woman who has a lot of ideas. And everywhere I go, I'm a problem solver. So I want to make things better. And I would go into these organizations and be stifled. I wouldn't get opportunities. I wouldn't get promoted. People would take my ideas. They didn't want to give me the money for it. I'm helping organizations get millions of dollars and I'm getting pennies. And I'm the one of the people who's on the ground doing the work. And I was losing my mind. I just couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with being entrenched in whiteness like that. And so I told my husband, I said, honey, I'd rather die than to work for somebody again. So, freedom. I wanted to be free. I wanted off the plantation. No disrespect to people who like to work, but I feel like, this nation as it currently is was founded off of slavery, and it's still that structure. It's still in that structure. And I don't have employees for that reason. I work in a collective manner. I work with a collective of facilitators. So that's how I do my work. And so that's why I was born. So I work with organizations to create inclusive environments. I do DEI, strategic planning, coaching, consulting, and community engagement. And my goal is to create economic prosperity for BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, beginning with the Black community. We've been suffering for, like I said, hundreds of years. It hasn't just been the last couple of days. Like, you know what I mean? We have been through so much, and I think we're tired. We've been tired.
And that brings us to what's happening that we saw in Minneapolis and now has spilled out into other places all over the country with protests, including here in Portland. And I can't imagine that that was surprising to you to see that. Tell me about your reaction.
Um, Actually, I was kind of happy to see it. I don't want people to think that I promote the destruction of property because honestly, I believe that there are people who have infiltrated some of these movements that are happening. And I do believe that the majority of these movements are peaceful and, the media doesn't always cover things truthfully. But I think it's time for the people to rise up and we have to do things differently than it's ever been done before. We have to. We can't keep doing this. Like everybody is suffering. It's not just Black and Indigenous people of color, but white folks as well. Suffering in the fact that the state of mind, I don't know how people can continue to murder and rape and pillage in a way historically that white folks have and be okay with it and not say, you know what, I'm not going to teach this to my kids. I'm going to make sure that this ends with me. Like the cycle has to be broken. I'm ready to share my wealth and share my prosperity and to get rid of the scarcity kind of hoarding mindset of no, me. If we let, diverse people come in our organizations, I'm going to lose my job. That's not the truth. Portland is the fourth fastest growing city in the United States and number 10 up from 17 for wealth. We have an abundance here, an abundance. And all we have to do is share. That's it. That's all we have to do is share. So the fact that the people are outraged, they have the right to be outraged. They weren't hurting people. They were breaking windows and burning buildings, things that don't move. Floyd lost his life. Kendra James lost her life. Breonna Taylor lost her life. Ahmaud Arbery, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, Quantas Hayes, Aaron Campbell, and the list just goes on and on and on. We can never get their lives back. We got babies who are not going to have parents for no reason. For no reason. This man lost his life over a suspected $10 bill.
And as you list off those names, and like you said, that's just the beginning of the list of names throughout our nation's history. What do you want people to know about that history and putting this into historical context? What we're seeing happen now isn't the first time that this kind of anger has needed and has boiled over.
Yeah, I think it's almost been like 100 years since the Tulsa race riots, but it needs to happen. It needs to happen. People need to show their emotion. I think that I'll speak for myself. I speak for myself, not on behalf of all Black people, but for me, in order to navigate whiteness, I've been told to keep my emotions down. I can't, I try to make myself seem as less threatening as possible. Just even looking white people in the eye and they feel some type of way sometimes when I'm in certain type of spaces, and navigating those things. I don't know how people do it, and it literally drove me insane to the point where I would just rather not have a job and be homeless than to continue to deal with this. And I think that it's time for we as a people, and I mean we, all of us, every race is a social construct. It was used as a divide and conquer strategy by the elite 1% in the 1600s. Come on, look it up. You know what I mean? To divide us. We are more alike than we are different. I think I read that Mr. Floyd and the officer actually worked together. They were co-workers. They were in the same space. We are actually more alike than we are different. And these people who are making billions of dollars on our death and suffering, these capitalists who could care less about us, are using these strategies to divide us. It's not the rich people who are going to be on the ground with the guns hunting us. It's not them. They're not the ones who are on the ground doing it. It's people who make around the same money, the same, wealth, is dealing with some of the same struggles. And I think that by using race, it just keeps us separate. And we have to realize it's a methodology that we need to dispel and dismantle and get over.
How do you think we get past that construct that is so deeply ingrained in our society as Americans?
I think what we need to do is, one, educate ourselves. Education. That's what I do at Empress Rules. I'm pretty much just a teacher, educating people about the history. How do we get here? We keep going around in circles, doing the same behaviors over and over again. There'll be another one. We don't change things. It's going to be another right in 100 years, right? So we have to educate ourselves. We have to look at ourselves. How have we internalized whiteness and white supremacy? Because this is a white supremacist nation that we live in the United States of America. And so I'm impacted by it, and so are you. We're impacted because this is the culture that we grew up in. This is not my language. As an enslaved African who was brought here to the United States, this is not my language. This is not my culture. And so whiteness is ingrained in me, and those behaviors are ingrained in me. And so it's up for me to do my own personal work, to learn about my own racial internalizations of inferiority or superiority, because that's what racism is about. It's false internalizations that one race is superior to another, and it's just not true. That's why I feel like if we had more integration, we would have been done with COVID. Why? Because we would have had so many different people with different perspectives to work on it. But because of exclusion, we don't have that. So we're all suffering. People who are going to die who didn't need to die had we had equity and inclusion. So we get the opportunity to change that. Do your own personal work. Go talk to your aunties, your grandma, because that's who they are. That's who these people are. They're our family members. You got to go talk to him. You got to tell him, I'm not down with this, Dad. Write me out the will. I'm not down with it. It's not okay, Dad. Uncle, you can't tell those jokes anymore. We have to make sure that we hit our equity targets in our organizations. We need to make sure that we have people of color, especially Black folks, because the reason why we have the term BIPOC is to acknowledge anti-Blackness, indigenous invisibility, and folks of color. But anti-Blackness is when you'll have people of color in the organization, but nobody who looks like me. And we need people to stand up to make sure that we're integrating our organizations and that we're creating space for multiple perspectives. And that's how we're going to grow exponentially.
And I think that is like such an important point to make too, because so often we turn to the Black community when it is a story or it's something that has to do with race, but that's not the voice that we always just need to hear. It's about every topic that those voices need to be heard. Is that kind of the message that you'd like to get across?
Absolutely. We're people. We're people. We do everything that white people do too, and more. We are people. We're excellent people. We're amazing people. I love Black people. I love my indigenous people. I love working with my immigrant communities. I love hanging out and having barbecues. Well, we can't have barbecues now, but but when we can, again, we have our physical distancing because we can be as social as we want to be, right? So the terminology, when we have our physical distancing spaces, I just love being in community with them. I learned so much. I learned so many different ways to do things because I'm surrounded by multiple perspectives. And that's the beauty. And that's the thing that we're missing out of. All these structures were designed to oppress us. These systems, our legal system is rooted in white supremacy. Our Constitution is an inherently white supremacist document rooted in patriarchy and sexism and racism. That's what this is founded off of. I feel like that's a lot. I hope I answered the question, but
Well, and you know what you're talking about, like that expanding your worldview, letting in uncomfortable conversations or things that you might not be familiar with. Why is that? Do you think that is such an important first step in to being even able to understand the need for change? Is just expanding that worldview.
Because I think that first people have to realize that there's a problem. Right now, there's people in the world who believe that there is no problem right now. I remember working with the organization and experienced, racism like within 5 minutes. It was wild. And this man said racism is dead and gone. It doesn't exist here. Like, we're here to talk about this specific subject. And I was blown away. How could this man exist in the world and not understand the suffering? It's because we don't have a shared history. White folks were taught this one history, and then we have the history that we have lived, and they're not the same. Columbus Day. Are you serious? Like, that's a colonizer. He raped and pillaged a whole bunch of people. That's not a person we want to celebrate, but that's one of our holidays. We got rapists and slave owners on our money. Like, just raising the consciousness about who's on your money. Are you okay with that? Is that what you're okay with? So without that awareness, understanding of history, and educating our children about the real history, it's going to be challenging to change because people don't believe there's a problem.
Is there anything in particular? Obviously, 100+ years of history is hard to boil down into just a few points, but is there anything specific that you want anybody watching this to know about our history that really does impact and play a role in what's happening right now? Anything in particular? Because there's a lot.
I think the biggest thing that we need to address is dehumanization. Dehumanization. I mentioned the Constitution where Black folks are in there. You can go look at the where it says that we're 3/5 of a person, and Indigenous folks aren't human at all. So think about that. That was hundreds of years ago with the founders. And so everything that came out of those founding documents and anything that they created, that's what it's stenched with. So these policies, these procedures, our government, all of that stuff, think about the root of it and where it comes from. We're going to have to dismantle this through the changing of our policies. Our immigration policy is disgusting. Our prison policies that we have right now, people are dying of COVID. It's very inhumane. Dehumanization, because if they're in prison, if they have a felony, you are dehumanized. You are no longer worthy of the same treatment of me. And in our laws, it says that slavery is hereby abolished except for in the penitentiary. And where are we located? What was mass incarceration about? Enslaving us again. COVID killing us. There's so many different ways. Systemic oppression, killing us in hospitals. Our maternal mortality rate, diabetes, all these different things. We're not going to make it. And so what I really want people to think, and what I'm really asking, is for people to understand or question themselves about, why don't I care? Why is it? Why are people hiding behind this cloak of ignorance? This stuff is happening. That what you can do to give. What is standing in the way of you giving? Why don't you love? Why don't you? We fought. Black folks have fought in every United States war that there have been. We have fought with y'all. And then what happens after every single war? Y'all hate us again. And white folks killed Black folks during the wars that we fought with y'all in. Shot us in the back. Put us in the front. And we fought with y'all through every doggone war. When are y'all going to fight for us? When are you going to love us enough? Or leave us alone? Just leave us alone. Give us the resources that we have already paid for. Our ancestors already paid the debt. I mentioned to you about my grandfather. My grandfather was not allowed to be a trained conductor. He had to be a porter, which was a chef. So I grew up having gourmet meals because I thought that's just what you got. That's what I thought grandparents did, not because my grandfather couldn't be a conductor because he was Black. He already paid for me. He already paid for my housing. He already paid for my opportunities. He already paid for my college. He already paid for that. But now you got Black and brown folks strapped with $90,000 and $100,000 in student loan debt. Our housing prices, $350,000 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, barely over 1,000 square foot home. Who can afford that? We're not getting opportunities. What's wrong with you? That's what I need people to examine. And I need you to learn how to love. Do your work and figure out how you gonna love.
And is that how you think we can really best move forward? Like you said, education, understanding, removing that cloak of ignorance. Is that really what it's going to take for us to at least take those first steps that it's taken us so long to achieve?
Yeah. Absolutely. Center the voices of BIPOC communities. We know what we need. We just have been stripped and ravaged of the resources. We don't have the money to carry out the work. And I have these people who want to do well, but don't have the life experience to understand what I'm talking about, in charge of money that I need to survive. They don't understand my sense of urgency. They don't understand why it's so important. They don't understand my culture. They don't understand my history, my family, the suffering, or anything. And we have to get rid of that. The goal is not to eradicate white folks, is to decenter whiteness. Decenter. We need to get some of these people just are not, I love you, but you're not supposed to be in leadership. And I really appreciate the white folks that I have gotten to work with who have gotten out of their chair and said, you're right, I am not supposed to be in this chair. I'm sorry. Let me go get you some money so that you can actually do the work that you need to do. That's what I appreciate. That's what I need. I need those backdoor conversations where you know that, you have resources or access to resources. When you hear ideas, brilliant ideas from Black and brown folks, that you fund them, no questions asked. Give us an opportunity to do for ourselves. We don't need handouts. We need hand-ups.
And let's talk about those resources a little bit, because you've been able to create something pretty amazing, an equity circle of giving. Tell me about what this is and how this got started.
Yes, I will say most definitely the idea itself was created with a collaboration of women, but particularly AJ McQuarrie. I hope I said her name right. She's amazing. She has just been an advocate for just the BIPOC community for just since I've known her, just absolutely incredible. But I'm a part of this women's entrepreneurship group. And there was a racial conflict. There's like 7,000 women in there. And there was a racial conflict of it's mostly white women. And there was just some silencing of some Black women that was going on in there. And it was just unacceptable. An amazing woman named Cole Reed. She owns Greenhouse and Open House in North Portland. Visit, because she's got great stuff. Was like, this has to stop. And just raised hell in that group. And there was an initial training, and there's some more conflict and and then we did a training together. I was able to be at the second training and facilitate the second training. And some of those core women who organized that stuff got together with AJ, myself, some other Black women, Lillian Green, Divisha, Rashay, forgive me if I'm leaving out you, Maggie. We got so many, I don't want to leave anybody out. But got together and we said, hey, these things need to change. We cannot wait for our government or for somebody to tell us when it's time to activate ourselves and do the right thing. And so they're doing their own work. White women are holding each other accountable to what they can do. They're giving. They're paying Black folks, Black and brown folks, for our labor. So when we're educating you, when we have to stop out of our day, because that's all we want to do is educate white folks, they're shooting Cash App, they're shooting Venmo. Thank you so much for the learning. Let me get you lunch. Let me get you dinner, instead of just taking and taking and taking and taking. And so from there, we started fundraising. We started with fresh produce. So we bought from CSAs, which is community. Oh, shoot. Oh, my gosh. Anyway, we purchased CSA subscriptions from BIPOC farmers, and we gifted them to BIPOC community members. And so we were able to raise over $350,000 in just the last 2 months. And so we're going to be doing that. We're moving on to housing strategy. We try to get people out of poverty. We've gotten people out of poverty, out of poverty into home ownership and creating generational wealth. And it's all voluntary. We're giving no strings attached. The people who are working with this understand you may not get a tax write-off. You're practicing freedom and giving because it's the right thing to do. Otherwise, you might be hoarding. So give. Yeah.
And so 2 months raising that $350,000. What are the next steps here? What's happening now?
Yeah. So the next step is we're making sure that we're getting those CSA subscriptions delivered to families. We're seeing in the meantime, what do people need? So we're having individual fundraising when people need stuff for their business, if they need help paying rent. Like our next housing strategy, which I'm excited to do, is my hope is to partner with different organizations and get some fund matching. So let's say we put up 10,000, and then we have 4 or 5 of the partners put up 10,000. That becomes down payment assistance, especially for BIPOC communities who are ready for home ownership, but they had those last roadblocks, like those closing costs. They can't afford furniture or to get those couple little repairs. We not only do we want to pay that off for you, we want to make sure we give you a couple months mortgage. We get you some gift cards from Black owned furniture. We got to get some Black owned furniture shops because I don't know if we have any right now, but we need to invest in getting that so we can be ready. And then gift cards to different Black owned businesses for you to purchase from. So that is our hope. Whoever wants to get with us, they can visit us on the equitablegivingcircle.org. And that's how we change things.
Is there anything else that you want people watching this to know about what's happening all around the country as protests continue today?
I just want people to know that people are suffering. People are suffering, and it can be stopped with us. We just really have to come together. We just have to come together. And I feel like the biggest thing that I can really share is just love. We really have to love each other. I know some people are like, I don't love in the organization or in the boardroom. There's no love in the emotions in the boardroom. No, we have to love each other. We have to love each other. We have to see the brilliance and the greatness in Black and brown communities because it's there. And if you really want to transform your life and your world, you have to give people opportunities and invest. And that takes love. So I just really want people to love each other. My heart goes out to Mr. Floyd's family and everyone who's been impacted by it, from everyone, Mr. Aubrey and Miss Taylor, like just so many people who we've lost in just such a short amount of time. But the hate has to stop, and I think it's going to come from love and accountability. Because if you love somebody, you're gonna hold them accountable. We have to hold these folks accountable. We have to hold these rogue officers accountable because there are good officers out there. I have met some, and I've met some corrupt officers as well who have totally taken advantage of me and people from my community, and I'm still willing to love. Every time I do a training, with a group of white folks, I know that there's a chance, and it always happens, that racism and white supremacy is going to spew out. But I'd rather it spew in this enclosed area than outside of it. So keep doing your work. It's going to take love, but I honestly believe that we can change things. We can, and we will. We will. We're going to end this.
Well, Kheoshi, I thank you so much for your time and your perspective.
Thank you. Appreciate you as well.